Hello and welcome. Wherever you go in the older parts of Chennai, you will see red colored buildings. Most of these structures belong to the government and they are all built in the Indo-Saracenic style. Who was the man who gave definition to this style in our city? Robert Fellows Chisholm. Let us look at his career in India. The first building to have ever been built in the Indo-Saracenic style was undoubtedly Chepauk Palace. And by Indo-Saracenic style, I mean a European piece of work which combines Islamic architecture, Gothic artistic styles, and elements of Hindu art in it. The first such structure was Chepauk Palace, constructed for the Nawab of Arcot in the 1760s. I have already spoken at length about this palace in an earlier episode, and that was constructed by Paul Benfield, a contractor of the East India Company. For a good 100 years thereafter, the Indo-Saracenic style was not in vogue among the Europeans. But in 1857, the University of Madras came into existence, and the government desired that a college building and a Senate house be constructed for it. A competition was announced, and engineers and architects from all over India sent in their designs. The prize money was big, 3,000 rupees for 1857. And the design that was selected was that of an unknown engineer in the PWD in Bengal Presidency. And that was Robert Fellows Chisholm. Chisholm was born in 1840 in the United Kingdom, lost his parents early, studied art, studied engineering, came down to India and found employment in the PWD. On his design being selected, he was transferred to Madras. Even while work was going to start on the Presidency College, he was asked to construct offices for the PWD fronting the Chepauk Palace. At that time, Chisholm was not a votary of the Indo-Saracenic style. He created the PWD building in what is known as the Scottish baronial style. And then work began in the late 1850s on Presidency College. This was in the Italianate Renaissance style. Once again, not in the Indo-Saracenic style. Late in the 1860s, in 1869, Chisholm was supposed to begin work on the Senate House, and it appears that he gave it a Greek look. And then the governor of Madras at that time, Lord Napier, sent Chisholm to Madurai to do repair work on the Thirumalai Nayak Mahal. Chisholm was not happy with that assignment. He grumbled and groaned and went to Madurai. But once he saw the Thirumalai Nayak Mahal, something came over him, and he became a complete votary of the Indo-Saracenic style. Not only did he write articles on the Thirumalai Nayak Mahal, when he went back to England, he would also speak at length about it. In Chennai, in the meanwhile, he destroyed whatever designs he had for the Senate House and completely created a new one in the Indo-Saracenic style. And that is when work began. The work continued between 1869 and 1873, and eventually at a cost of rupees 2,80,000, the University Senate House was completed. It was a great work of art. And what was remarkable about it was the fact that except for the stained glass windows, everything else had been sourced indigenously. Chisholm did not remain idle with just these two structures. He was asked to build a unifying tower between the two wings of the Chepauk Palace, Humayun Mahal and Khalas Mahal. And that is how you have the Chepauk Tower. At the same time, he was also working on several other buildings all across Madras Presidency. Starting from the palace in Jaipur in Orissa, to a church in Kadapa, to the St. George's Church in Madurai, to a church in Rangoon, he was doing all kinds of things. In the city itself, there are several buildings that speak of him. The General Post Office, constructed in the 1880s in Rajaji Salai, inspired by the roofs in Kerala, because he had designed the Napier Museum in Travancore. And then the offices and the buildings of the Madras Club in what is today Express Avenue Mall, completely demolished. The buildings of the Buckingham and the Carnatic Mills, the Victoria Public Hall, even the tower of the central station. P.R. and Sons, incidentally, is a Chisholm design. Chisholm worked very, very busy. At this time, he also designed some very ordinary buildings. For instance, the old Police Commissioner's Office on Police Commissioner's Office Road in Egmore, a remarkably ugly structure, was designed by Chisholm as well. And it makes you wonder what made him create such an ordinary building. Chisholm and the government were forever at loggerheads on budgets, on expenditure, on charges of corruption. And eventually, when his promotion was denied, he resigned and moved over to Baroda. In Baroda, the Gaikwad was building an enormous palace called Lakshmi Vilas. The architect, Colonel Charles Ment, had a mental disorder and he committed suicide. Chisholm was asked to complete the structure, which he did. And then he went on to design 18 other buildings in Baroda city. Eventually, at the beginning of the 20th century, Chisholm went back to England. When you compare the activity of his career in India, he was not in demand in England and he faded into obscurity and retirement. But in 1911, the government decided that it was going to build a new capital city for India in what was called New Delhi. Sir Edwin Lutyens was commissioned to design it. Lutyens did not admire Indian style and he wanted the whole of New Delhi to be built in the high classical style of the Greeks. It was Chisholm who began a campaign by writing letters to the press stating that Indians will appreciate only the Indo-Saracenic style. That created a wave in support. Queen Mary, several officers in the government, they all weighed in and Lutyens had to change his design, and that is how New Delhi was built. The influence of Chisholm was felt even in 1914. Chisholm came back into the news for rather unfortunate reasons in the last year of his life. He was a follower of the sect of Church of Christ the Scientist, which did not believe in modern medication when people fell ill. Chisholm, in fact, designed the Church of Christ the Scientist in Cadogan Square in London. He was a follower of the sect, and when his youngest son fell ill with diphtheria, Chisholm believed that prayers would cure the boy. The child died, and the nurse in charge of the boy filed a complaint in the police station charging Chisholm with manslaughter, that he had denied his son medical treatment. Chisholm was arraigned and brought to trial. And during the trial, it was very clear that the judgment would go against him. On the day of the verdict, the court in London received a telegram. Chisholm had lost his oldest son in a war in South Africa. The judge released Chisholm on sympathetic grounds, saying that a man cannot have two punishments on the same day. He had lost his son and he was not going to be punished for another crime. Chisholm walked out a free man and died the next year. In India, his memory is celebrated by way of the numerous buildings that he left behind for us, including the Lawrence School in Ooty. And when you walk by the Marina Beach, you are really surprised at what one man could do to a skyline of an entire city. Chisholm is cherished in India, though he may have been forgotten in England.